Brown from Lymm in Cheshire said he made the remark as a joke and was mystified by the allegations. Sentencing Brown to 4 months in prison. The chairman of the bench said the matter was so serious it warranted a custodial sentence. He said a small incident on an aircraft in flight could have a catastrophic effect. Tonight, Brown's solicitor said he would be appealing against the sentence. Christine McGauley, North West Tonight.
1998, touring with Ian Brown, and My Star was in the charts around about number 5, I think it was getting in, so there was a big hype around him. And can I say first, actually, that it was great fun. Touring with Ian Brown was great fun. He was a really lovely guy. It's quite funny, though, because I got the job. I was actually asked to go out with the Stone Roses. And I was all lined up to go out with the Stone Roses, and I was really excited. This was absolutely huge. They were massive, and they were just doing one show, I think, one festival, and then we were going to start our run. And they did their one festival and split up. And I never got to work with them. I was, I got offered such a massive gig, and it didn't happen. But what did happen was that Ian Brown decided to knock out some single stuff, and so I ended up going out with him. So we were doing a show in Paris. It was a TV show, and so we'd all flown over British Airways in the morning, and we were business class. We all flew at the front of the plane. It was a nice promo. We hadn't seen each other for a long time. There's probably, 10, 11 of us in total, band and crew. And obviously we used the lounge as we were waiting to go in. And I suppose we were a little bit loud, but, no one was drinking. It was the morning anyway. So we continue. We go over to the gig and we have a great show. We do the show. And we're flying straight back after the gig. So we go back to the airport. We're flying to Charles de Gaulle, and we go to the first class lounge of British Airways, and we've had a good day. And no one drunk in the band. The manager had a drink. Noel, he drunk. Well, Noel. Managers about as far as the namesake went. It was literally just a title. Noel was just there. It's quite funny, actually. Noel was a lovely guy, but just there. And Ian insisted when we did these TV performances that he would be his backing singer. And so you had this real tall dude standing up on stage looking completely uncomfortable and out of place, standing in front of a microphone and going, "My Star," every so often, and producers would come up and say, "Who is that guy? What's he doing up on stage?" And you're like, "Oh, it's Ian's backing singer," and he said, "Yeah, but he can't sing," and it's like, "Oh yeah, no, don't turn his mic on." But he's not moving; he's got to stay there. And most of the time they didn't actually take his mic off anyway. It was just on. But Ian seemed to love it. It was just his mate standing up next to him on the stage. I'm pretty sure Noel didn't like it. Anyway, it seemed that he was the only one that did drink. I was driving back to London from Manchester, so I wasn't going to be drinking. Hugh was with me, the tour manager, so I wasn't drinking. Most of the band were Sikhs and Muslims, and they didn't drink. So we're all in the first class lounge, and I suppose we're chatting and we're having fun and we're having a laugh, and Noel does seem to be knocking back quite a bit of free alcohol. And we get on the flight, and it's 45 minutes from Paris to London at the best of times. So we all get on the plane. I'm sitting next to Ian. We're sitting in seats like row 4, I think, something like that. He's got the window seat. I've got the middle seat, and Sylvan, the bass player, has got the aisle seat. And Ian goes to sleep, tucks himself. He's asleep in the corner, and I'm having a coffee and reading the newspaper, and that's pretty much, there's nothing left to do really. The flight's almost over, and so I guess maybe 20 minutes, just the coffee's kind of being taken away, and and everyone's being cleared up, and they're getting ready to kind of come into land. And Noel kind of leans forward from his seat. He was sitting behind Ian, and slaps him on the back of the head, which wakes Ian up. And Ian's kind of a bit grumpy and a bit sleepy. And all I see, because I wasn't really paying attention, but all I see is that he's got his Nokia mobile phone out, and I remember kind of thinking, because it was pretty bad to get your phone out in those days anyway. But he's just he's turned it on, and he's typing two, just bored. Do you know what I mean? Nothing going on. And the stewardess is walking down the aisles. Now, as far as I can remember, I think she was like, asking people if they wanted duty frees or, whatever. She's doing her final kind of walk. And she gets to our seat, and it appears that she waves her finger at Ian in a kind of a tucked up way, right, due to him being on his phone. I mean, I'm still not paying any attention to it. And he looks at her and he says, don't wave your finger at me or chop your hand off, in a kind of a jokey kind of way. And she instantly comes back. She says, well, I didn't wave my finger at you. I was, and he said, look, I accept your apology, and that's great. But if you do it again, chop your hand off, And so she then continues on with, defensive. Well, no, sir. I mean, I didn't, and all this, and I think he says it again. And anyway, she kind of like walks off to the back of the plane. That was it, I'm sitting there reading the paper again, and all of a sudden, the captain comes down and he crouches down in front of me, and he looks me straight in the eye, in the face, and he says, everything all right, sir? Have you got a problem? And I said, no, thanks. Everything seems fine. I've had a sleep. I've had my coffee. I've read the paper. No, thanks. Everything's great. Thanks. And he said, well, I say you've got a problem. And I thought to myself, oh, right, hang on a minute. And I thought, oh, please, Ian, say something. And no one's saying anything. And I said, well, I suggest, sir, that you go back to where you've just come from, the back of the plane, have a chat with whoever you've just spoken to, and then come back and speak to the right passenger. And with that, Ian said, actually, I'm the one with the problem. And I thought, thank God for that. And I kind of put my head back in the paper, and the captain looks at him and he says, oh, yeah, and what are you going to do about it? And Ian kind of confusingly looked at him and he said, well, no, what are you going to do about it? And this kind of goes backwards and forwards. And I remember looking at Sylvian at the time. We both kind of brought our papers up in front of our face and thought, oh, hang on. And we're looking at each other and we're going, what? What kind of a conversation is this? And I think Ian then kind of says, I'll go get the cat to lick the cream off your whiskers or something, and sends him away. And the captain says, okay, I'll fix you. And disappears off. Now, Ian is a bit annoyed by this confrontation, and so he wants to go and talk to the crew and get some names and numbers and report them. So to which he stands up, he goes to the cockpit door, he knocks on it in quite a polite way, I must say, and at the moment he knocked on the cabin door, the seatbelt sign came on, and a stewardess came running over, and she said, "Sir, you must sit down. The plane is coming into land." Right, and she was quite forceful with him, and so Ian goes and sits back down in his seat, and we come into land, and we stop on the tarmac after we've landed. We're taxiing along for a little while, and then we just stop, nowhere near a gate, and it seems like 5 minutes pass, And I'm looking at Ian, and Ian looks back at me. And then the tannoy comes on, and the captain says, he says, ladies and gentlemen, he says, I'm ever so sorry. He said, for reasons that will become apparent later, he said, we're just going to wait here, and then we're going to go and taxi off to our station. Please sit tight. So with that, the plane waits a little while longer, and then it starts its journey again. And we pull up next to a gate, and there are 7 police cars, 2 police vans, a sea of policemen, all there. And Ian looks over and he says, "Oh," he says, "that will be the police waiting for me then." And I'd never been in this situation before. I'm like, oh, shit, you know, what the fuck? And I was quite scared. Manchester Airport as well, in 1998. And so we all get told that it's time to leave the plane, everybody. So up I stand with everybody else, and we start to kind of walk out. It was almost like a scene from Midnight Express, when you're standing there, and when you get to the bottom of the stairs, you're kind of thinking, "Don't pick me, don't pick me," you know. So I went down the steps, and I just carried on turning as if I'm going towards the terminal with everybody else, you know, la la la, maybe they'll just avoid me. And this hand comes on my shoulder, and he says, "He's one of them," I hear. And this policeman looks at me and he says, "Sir, would you mind coming over here, please?" And my heart's beating, it's pounding. And I said, "Yeah, certainly. What appears to be the problem?" You know, and he says, "Well, I have reason to believe, sir, that you are drunk and disorderly on this flight and have caused a fracas." And I said, "Well, you can breathalyse me, sir." I said, "because I've not had a drop to drink, because I have to drive back to London in a van right now." And he said, "Well, I can see that you're not drunk." And I said, "Good." That's all right then. He said, "So can you tell me what's going on?" And I said, "Well," I said, "apparently Ian had a few words with the stewardess, and now it seems to have turned into this. To be honest, nothing really happened." I said, "It's all it's a strange thing, really." I must say that around this time, it was 1998, and I think the Euros were going on at the moment, and there was this kind of zero tolerance thing going on with airlines, especially with British Airways, that they weren't taking any shit because of the amount of hooligans that were just going out there and drinking on their flights and giving shit. And this did seem like the most perfect opportunity for them to kind of demonstrate that they actually meant it. So it all seemed quite exaggerated to what it actually was. Anyway, so the policeman's standing there with me, and he says, "Well, maybe you can point out a few of the people that are in your group then." And I said, "Okay." You know, so we're standing there, and we start off by joking about they just changed the pattern from the flag to these weird kind of shit designs on the back of the tail of the plane. I remember having a long discussion with him over saying, "No, you know, what the fuck's going on with the back of these planes now?" Anyway, so we a couple of people come off, and a few of them start appearing. We get to the top of the steps, and I said, "Oh, there's one of them." And he said, "Oh yeah." And I said, "But he's a Sikh. He doesn't drink." And he went, "Oh, okay." So anyway, "Can you stand over here, please?" "Yeah, no problem." This one, there's one. "Yeah, but he's Muslim. He doesn't drink." So okay, all right, no problem. So we all come down one at a time, and none of them drinking. None of the band have had a drink. They're all sober. We all get off, and then all of a sudden, at the top of the stairs, appears Noel, and he's like that. And I said, now he's one of them. And I said, and it appears he's had a drink, but he wasn't actually involved in the incident, apart from maybe waking Ian up. And he's like, "Right, okay." So he comes down the stairs, and he gets arrested just because he's drunk and disorderly. And I mean, he was wasted. And the only person that hasn't come off the plane is Ian. He's up there now with the police. They're they're holding in, they're doing an interview, they're talking to the stewardess, and they're trying to work it out. And he's resisting arrest. He's not taking it, and he won't give his name and number and all this kind of malarkey. And he's saying, "No, you can't do this to me," and nothing happened. And I remember them taking him off the plane, and we were standing on the tarmac. Now, I was going back to London with the tour manager, who's now standing with me. And as Ian comes down the stairs and he's refusing to give his name and address, just because they were saying, "Look, just give us your name and address to all of us, and then you can go on your way. You know, nothing else will happen. You may get called on." So we were all just about to go, and it was just a matter of the names and addresses. But Ian was adamant that nothing had happened. And, you know, this is ridiculous. And no, he's not going to hand over his details. He was the master at getting into trouble, it has to be said. And he took it to his advantage on many occasions. But on this occasion, from my point of view, you know, this was very, very innocent set of circumstances. Or it certainly wasn't what they told you in the papers anyway. So, anyway, so they take Noel away and they take Ian away. And they take them to that little police station on the airport. And so Hugh's kind of like, "Well, I can't just leave here without him, really, can I? You know, I've got to go and try and get him out at least." So we drive along to the police station, and we walk on in. "Excuse me, sir. Yes, what can I do for you?" So we've come to pick up you have one of our mates in custody, and we'd like him, please, if that's all right. Yeah, here we go. And he brings Noel out. And Noel's standing there like this with his duty freeze in his hand. And we said, "No, we don't want that one. You can keep him. We've come for the other one." And they said, "You can't have the other one." And we said, "No, but that's the one we want. We definitely don't want this one." He said, "No, you have to take this one." I said, "Well, no, we're not taking this one. This one is yours. And we don't want to deal with it. We need to deal with the one that you've got." So, you know, anyway, they didn't let us after a lot of pleading, and we managed to sneak out without taking Noel with us. It's like, "No, he's your problem." And we ran. And we got in the van and we carried on. And nothing was kind of said or mentioned. I don't think we really worked after that for about 8 months. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, I get a phone call from Ian. "Ah, Danny." He says, "Listen," he said, "I've got to appear in court with this, incident that happened, and you were sitting next to me, so will you be my number one witness?" And I'm like, "Oh, shit, I've never been to court before, you know, nothing that big." And, oh, Jesus Christ, yeah, well, yeah, okay. I can't really say no, can I? I'm just sitting there. So I thought, okay, look, fine. He said, "Look, my lawyers will be in touch with you, and they'll take a statement and stuff, and then we'll go from there." Brilliant. I thought, okay, so I've got time to kind of work out, you know, remember kind of what happened, because to me it was as blasé as I've just told you. And so, you know, I'm thinking, well, did I miss something here? Will I say the wrong thing? Oh, you know, it was that chop your hands off bit is a little bit edgy, you know, and I'm starting to question it. But I can't lie. I can't, you know, and I'm thinking, well, how much does he want me to tell? Really, you know, do I think he was in the wrong? And I started really questioning my ability to be able to do this. And so anyway, I didn't get a phone call from his solicitors or his lawyers or anything. And suddenly Hughes called me up and he said, "Look, we're going up to Manchester. We're going to stay in the hotel there, and we're going to appear in court over the next couple of days." So we go up there, and still hear nothing from his lawyers or anything like that. We don't speak to anybody here. We literally just turn up on day one, 8 o'clock in the morning, outside the court. And I go in and I get introduced to his solicitors, who then take me into this side room and said to me, "Okay, what happened?" And I'm okay, so I tell them the story as I've told you. thank you very much, you know, and off I go. And we sit outside, and there's all the band and the crew outside in the large kind of waiting area, just outside the courtroom. We're obviously not allowed in until our part, but the first day is all about them, all about the stewardesses, and all about the charge. And so we're just out there, and we're getting, it's a long day, 7-8 hours. I think we're stuck outside this courtroom, and we're having a bit of a laugh and a joke, as you do, and it gets a little bit loud every so often, and someone keeps coming out the courtroom and saying, "Would you be quiet? This is your last warning, or you'll go home." And you're like, "Oh, sorry," Anyway, so day one finishes, and we all go home. Day two happens. And it's now our turn. We know it's going to be our turn to go in, and I clock in as he's going in the room, and as he walks past me. He's like, "All right, Danny," he says, don't lie, Danny." And I thought, fuck, what does that mean? Does that mean lie? Or does it mean don't lie? Manchester and London were kind of quite divided. Manchester crew, London crew, there was a definite divide there. And it was the same with, the families in that respect. Although we were very much in the crew, it was still very, very different. And it was a different kind of gang that you were part of now. Do you know what I mean? And something that maybe you felt a little bit uncomfortable about being in these situations. So I get hauled up, and I'm standing in the witness box there, and I'm, swearing, and they ask me they ask me questions on the stories. Could you point out to where you were sitting on this plane map? So me, I was sitting here. So I put it to you that you were sitting next to Ian Brown. Yes, I was. Yes. It's true that Ian Brown said, don't wave your finger at me, or I'll chop your hand off. And how many times did Mr. Brown say this? And I said, three times maybe at most. Three times. So don't wave your finger at me, I'll chop your hand off. Don't wave your finger at me, I'll chop your hand off. Don't wave my finger at me, I'll chop your hand off. And I looked at him and I said, well, no. There was obviously conversation in between. And I'm thinking, this is Ian's lawyer now grilling me here, and I was feeling very uncomfortable about these kind of comments. He said to me, how long do you think the conversation between Ian and the stewardess went on for? And I said, a couple of minutes at most. He said, well, a couple of minutes is an awful long time, don't you think? And I said, all right, well, a minute then. And so the whole of the press in the gallery went, oh, and gasped, and it was all quite funny, and I'm sort of like looking a little bit puzzled. And I said, well, I wasn't really timing it, to be honest with you. I said, but not a very long time. So I guess what? A minute is not a very long time. And then we carry on with the conversation, and eventually it gets to the point where he says, when I put it to you that Ian tried to break into the cabin, whilst the plane was coming into land. And I said, well, no. I said, that's not true at all. I said, Ian's, after us speaking to the stewardess and the captain, Ian stood up to knock on the pilot door, correct? But the moment he knocked on the door, the seatbelt sign came on and he was asked to sit down, to which he responded and sat down. And he's like, well, yeah, you're not very good with time, Mr. Barley, are you? And I said, that's how long it took. To which they all gasped again, which I thought was quite funny. And I'm a little bit confused to look, really, why are you trying to make this something that it isn't? And they were grilling me at such a hard level. And I'm still sitting there saying, look, he was joking. Really, she just took it the wrong way. It's just like, don't move your finger at me, I'll chop your hand off. What are you going to chop her hand off with? The little plastic knife that they give you. It's just not going to happen, And it was just for their own benefit. So I finished my time, in court, and I feel like I've let him down, to be honest, because I just there wasn't really anything else to kind of say about it. And everything I was saying, they were just twisting into some kind of large, like the plane was about to crash. you know, and it was all terrible. And I'm like, well, not really. Actually, nothing happened at all when we were sitting there, really, apart from that little conversation, you know, and there may be a chance after. I think he probably lost his chances by what he said to her on the first day of court. I believe he kind of shouted out a remark as she was going into the courtroom, along the lines of, well, no, I'm not going to say what it was, but it's the only time I've ever heard him swear, put it that way. And I don't think that helped his case. But anyway, so we're in the courtroom, and I'm allowed to stay there now and listen to a few of the others. So I opt to kind of just stay in and see what the result's going to be. And it comes right to the end, and it's looking all good for us, really, you know, in respect of everyone's just played it down, and there is, you know, but it was all of us that played it down. So that's us bases versus British Airways. So it was a no-win situation from the start, really. We were basically just getting a telling off for doing what we, you know, for causing disruption on a flight, and making an example of us. And anyway, so yeah, because we're sitting there right at the end, and suddenly it was like, okay, well, Ian Brown for assault to a stewardess and to a captain, we find you not guilty. And we're thinking, oh, this is going well. But endangering the lives of all the other passengers whilst distracting the pilot's attention whilst the plane is coming into land, 4 months. I know. And so we lost out on a tour to Japan, and we lost out on a tour to the UK that we were just about to do. And it was a bit of a shame, really, because he only actually served a month. He was out just before Christmas, and he wrote, I think, Jingle Jangle Goes the Jailer when he was in there, and he was having quite a hit on the outside. So the publicity was fantastic. I remember it was a bit awkward, actually, being with him afterwards, after that, and I think it was almost at the end of the kind of the reign, because I did feel a little bit, you know, I couldn't save him, and I almost felt like I'd let him down a little bit. And I remember we met in the rehearsal room toilet. We were standing by the urinals, and he kind of says to me, he said, "Do you know what, Dan?" I said, "What?" He said, "Whilst I was in prison, the only person that came in and visited me and gave me money for the tuck shop and stuff was Hugh." And I thought, shit, was that directed at me? Because I didn't have any fucking money and I couldn't get up to Manchester or Leeds to visit. No, that's right, Manchester to visit. But yeah, it was a little bit awkward after that, and things kind of fizzled out after that. But my time with Ian, I have to say, was brilliant. Every day he was quite humble. Every day after the show, as I was walking across towards the dressing rooms, even if he was mid-interview, he would break away from them, call over to me, come over and say, Danny, thanks, mate, thanks. And then get back on with his interview. I mean, half of it was probably for the cameras, you know, but every day, without fail, he always came up to me and thanked me personally and just broke off from whatever else he was doing. So, a good guy. Anyway, Ian Brown, innocent as fuck.